suite back there, some of which needs recalibration after every flight and before every flight. Of course, I can't go into the classified details of our electronics warfare system here, but it is very effective, and we have to use it quite a bit. We are flying, of course, in a second-hand Hannibal 23 model passenger saucer. We got it. It's actually an old Lufthansa model from an alternate universe, and amazing the deals you can pick up if you check Craigslist. We get the Agartha edition, which is a little different, but did the Agartha run for a while, but the Nexus there for saucers is just too big and too many alternate universes docked there. So they gave me the Buenos Aires to Shambhala run. Looks like we've got all the passengers on the saucer. And they're just clearing got a couple of flights ahead of us. The tower just confirmed. A little foggy here, but clear flying ahead.
So now I have to edit the name and everything because apparently I left it as Dreagus Productions when it's actually supposed to be Automatic Pilot.
We don't want to confuse people.
That's right, Automatic Pilot.
It's sort of own pilot for short, which is kind of neat too. I hadn't thought of that before.
That's right. Okay, so it looks like we are up and going, and we have you on the 24/7 live stream as well as on the Wonderful World of Weirdness on YouTube.
Excellent. Excellent.
So now let me go ahead and do the countdown real quick and we can get started.
Aye, aye.
And here we go. 3, 2, 1, now.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome aboard Clandestine International Airlines Flight 17. We just left Buenos Aires and are on our way to Shambhala International Airport. We had a bit of fog getting off the runway, and we had a couple of flights ahead of us that were soon cleared away. Thank goodness I have those forward lasers. And we're just reaching our cruising altitude of 32,000 feet. So I'm going to be turning off the seatbelt light. Please feel free to get up and wander about the cabin or visit our lounge on the upper deck. And the smoking lamp is lit. Smoke them if you got them. And I'm going to switch on the automatic pilot. Hey, and I'm here with my co-pilot and electronics warfare officer, Roger Hansen. Roger, how you doing tonight?
It's okay. Doing a lot of house cleaning, getting things organized, and taking care of business. It's about all I can say.
Yeah, you've had more than your share.
Oh yeah.
Of IRL lately, and I don't know if you want to talk about that on the show or not.
Oh, I'm okay with it. Yeah, I had a recent passing away. It was my father who passed away, so it's been a rough week or so, week and a half now. So, but we're getting it done. I went through, started cleaning up the house, getting things organized, and moving stuff out, putting it in storage, things like that. So.
that can be really tough because I think something like that happens and then you've got all that stuff to do and it's like this echo. It's like this echo of the person because you're seeing all their things and yeah. But you've been working a lot despite this.
Yeah, I have been doing quite a bit, but at the same time, I get what you're saying there because it's like I had to go through his paperwork and stuff like that, and then go through my mom's stuff because we haven't gotten all of that packed away either. So it's been a combination of everything.
I can't help it. It's just,
It-
it just seems like such a, it's one thing after another. I mean, really, God, come on, give Roger a break here. You know, uh,
I uh,
uh,
I just wanted to mention, it sounds like your mic is starting to break up.
oh, really? Okay, hang on a minute. I'm going to try to readjust it. This is the technical difficulty show, as always. How's that?
There you go.
Okay. I tend to actually, our audience can't see me, but I tend to gesticulate when I speak and make oratorical gestures. So I probably just disturb the. We do have some new technology like that we're trying out, but but all our passengers will be safe. So you've been doing. I've noticed that we were talking about it earlier. You're doing a 24/7 live stream project
Yes. I
right now.
I started it on Monday. Had a little bit of trouble because I should have been doing it the way I'm doing it now, but I started out trying to do the 24/7 live streams off of my multiple output that I have on my OBS.
Uh,
But the only problem with that is I don't have enough enough bit rate to push all of the platforms that I need. So I
oh,
I just twisted it around. I went through Rumble Studios to do the multi streams, and whenever I do individual streams like this one, I'll do just my OBS off of another computer that I've got set up, and we'll be able to get it done. Be able to do the 24 hours live with Roger Hansen, as well as all of the individual shows that I want to do for the different channels. And this one's The Wonderful World of Weirdness, and that one is on my main channel, Roger, Live with Roger Hansen.
well, Roger, I'm really glad you're here to do this for the show because I understood only about a tenth of that.
Okay.
Computer is, and I've heard you and Bob and Mike babble about OBS. I keep wanting to call them OBEs, out of body experiences.
Hey, go for it. That's what it is, believe it or not.
I guess it records things and moves them around or something. I
No,
never quite get it.
it allows you to enter a world that's beyond your control.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like just life.
Yeah, that too. But yeah, we've been doing quite a bit. I went ahead. What I did is my dad had a older computer that he was using that belonged to my mom, and I was thinking it would be good to put that to use. So what I did is I went in and set up all of the streams to where we could do the live stream, 24/7 live stream on that one, and do just regular streams like normal on this one. So
So you've got basically you've got an opportunity to do this, so you're doing it. You've got the technology.
yeah,
It's decided to put it to use right away.
exactly.
And because you've done 24/7 live streams before.
Yeah.
So this is obviously, it's not a new idea for you, but this seems like a chance for you to like take it a lot further on all these platforms.
Yes. Plus, I can use all of those 8-hour blocks that I went through and methodically prioritized, and
Wow.
and
Wow.
and
Yeah.
even put commercials on them
Nice.
for Sonya Galactic. So yeah.
I could see you, at one time back in ancient times, long ago, you would have been great as the head of like ABC or NBC back when they actually had like, media companies like that. You had to have a giant studio and all this stuff, and I could just see you directing programming for a nation.
The thing with me, I mean, it's just I'm sitting in the corner of my back room doing it with 3 computers. That's
That's
it.
amazing. That's amazing.
And I got
And
two more that I can hook up to and put Linux on if I wanted to, but I really don't enjoy using Linux too much, so I try to avoid doing that kind of stuff.
really, I've heard people say nice things about it, but I don't understand it. I just turn on the computer and I press buttons. So I don't go further than the screen.
Linux gets a little bit more complicated, and especially when it comes to older computer systems.
Huh.
Yeah. So I try to avoid it as much as possible so that I can actually have some quality uh, video and streaming and stuff like that rather than beating my head in the computer table trying to figure out what the heck to do next, So,
All right. But you got to use what works for you. That's the thing.
yes, that's true.
That's different. But just being able to get out all this content and some very good content. I have been watching the. I don't watch myself. I
Hmm.
tend not to like listen to myself, but I've been when I can because I'm busy, man. I watch when I can, but watching some of your final productions of some of our episodes that we were doing while Bob was gone, and they're just magnificent, dude. You did so wonderful on them. Bob and I sat down and watched one, and I'm like, this is overwhelming. This is great. You've got an amazing talent for video editing, and it just seems to get better and better. Um, the live streaming is great, but I'd like to see you also making sure that you don't lose sight of that. Although, even the live streaming, it's got great visuals. I don't know how you do it. You there?
I was I had to get up real quick. There's something going on at the door. But
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah,
Hopefully, no passenger tried to jump out.
yeah. But yeah, the reason why those came out so well on the ones I did with Bob Dubgon was because I actually enjoyed it. You know what I mean? Is with this year after especially after January, I said I'm not doing all that other stuff. I'm gonna start doing what I enjoy doing, and
Uh-huh.
because we had already started strong on the quantum gathering, me and you had, and
Yeah.
I was like already getting into the whole editing thing, and I remembered how much I missed just sitting down and editing. So
Yeah.
that's really what sparked me to get it done. I was actually enjoying it.
Well, that's it. If you really enjoy something, and if you're good at something and you enjoy it, you'll do it more, and you'll just get better at it.
Yeah.
The feedback loop. So no, that's very cool, and I want to. I want to see more of your work, more of your work in that direction. Although, like I was saying, the live streams are great, and you have really good videos for visuals for the live stream too,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. Um, a lot more interesting than a lot of the live stream visuals I've seen.
Well, with me, I'm wanting to try to keep because I started out doing this all as a podcast, and I'm trying to keep it more themed towards a podcast kind of atmosphere. And everybody else wants to do like the whole showing your face, being on video and stuff like that. But I like the way the old time podcasts were, where it was slideshows and stuff like that. So I try to keep it that oriented that way rather than having people on the screen. If they want to come on the screen and show their face, they can, but it's not mandatory for me.
We don't. I remember a show that we did about the Bacon Shakespeare controversy, among other things.
Yes.
And the format on that worked really well. And there was like a timing, things were timed. You only had so much time to speak and response, and everybody had turns. And I wonder why we don't do that more often. I thought that worked wonderfully. How did you feel about it? How did it work for you?
Well, I'm used to doing that kind of a format, and I really do enjoy doing it. The only thing is we have to come up with like a a panel that's willing to agree to those terms, because we talk to a lot of wild and rambunctious kind of guys.
That is true.
So,
That is true. That's right. The personal equation is always important.
mhm. Now I know Mark Edworthy, he would be okay with it.
Yeah,
Bob Dub, I know would be. I know you would be, and then
yeah,
I mean, heck, well, actually, that's four people. We could easily do it.
yeah. I'm sure Tan would be as well.
Well, yeah, Dan, of course.
And I don't know. Do you think V could restrain himself?
No, V could, no, not V. Any
Oh,
anybody but V.
wow. Well, I'll trust your judgment.
Well, I
Maybe he
mean,
needs a special format.
he's a great guy. Don't get me wrong, but no, V would not be able to handle it. He would have some kind of a head explosion. Like he would he would probably have an aneurysm on the stream, trying to hold
Well,
himself back.
we certainly don't want that. That's just that's not the kind of stream we want to have.
No, only Mark Edworthy. I would love to see his head explode.
Mark, if you're here, he doesn't.
Oh, he already knows. It's like, yeah, we've already come close 2 or 3
Well,
times.
I was going to say it's not for one of you trying sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
I like to come to the poor guy's events once in a while.
I'll tell you.
It's such an unfair though. I mean, really, we shouldn't get into this on this show. The colonial versus the monarchy kind of the the unfortunate incident in 1776.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with me and him, I think it's more of both me and him enjoy that. You know what I mean? It's like it wouldn't be the same if we didn't like take pot shots at each other in our countries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's the same way as I am on that. At least I'm pretty sure he is. It's fun to do.
Yeah, yeah. And friends can talk to each other in ways that non-friends or people outside just would not understand.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is gonna be. And, you can go into some circles, and I used to hang out with a lot of heavy metal guys, and they were actually a really warm, companionable crowd. But some of the language, if you didn't know, they would use expletives. We're keeping it clean on this show, folks. That you can all imagine because everybody's heard them. But they meant them in the most loving way. And so yeah. And that's one of the interesting things about communication. There's so much more to it than just words.
Yeah.
Which is one of the problems with AI, because AI is just limited to just words.
I would be fine with AI if they could use cuss words. You know what I mean? And I mean that would make him seem a little bit more human. But I think that like it's the censoring that goes on within the AI too that really it doesn't feel authentic. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, one of the things that I always felt it's one of the things I didn't like about AI or LLMs or whatever, all these machines that talk to you is that they're just invariably polite. Even the ones on the phone, hello, how are you? Please make this selection. Please listen carefully, all this stuff. So I complained. I said I would want one of these things that would be grumpy. Something I'd say, hey, what's this? Like, what the fuck are you bothering me for? So we'll edit out that word. But hey, screw you, buddy. I'm busy. It's just something that would be grumpy at you once in a while. And apparently there is such a thing. Mike has something I can write into the AI. He gave me that a long time ago. I've never had the courage to use it. Maybe I'll try that and just see what kind of a grumpy AI would come out. I don't know if it would actually cuss, but it might.
Yeah, no, they have AIs that they've broke, and then like there are some that have been actually created from scratch. You know what I mean? And I tell people that if they don't like the chat boxes, and they're against that stuff, learn how to make your own. I mean, they're actually teaching people for free how to do it on the internet.
Cool.
Um,
Well, of course, Minds Gaming created that artificial intelligence. A couple of them, in fact, were LLMs. Um, Bahi created something called Bahi,
yeah.
which had some, it was very primitive, but it was also very illustrative. And I remember talking to him and Satori about this at the time. We had a couple of very interesting conversations about, I'm going to get it all wrong because it was long ago and I don't really understand it, but node clusters and basically the way they cluster certain groups of words together
Yeah.
that they associate with other words. And this is somehow a key component of their architecture. So if you could influence that, it would just be would create. I don't. Well, after that, it all gets a little fuzzy for me. So
In language, they have parsing. It's like a parsing tree, is what you call it. It's just
uh-huh,
a tree of words, and
right.
they parse it out. And you can go in there and you can actually learn how to manipulate it. So imagine a
Really?
tree of words that could be manipulated and altered.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah.
That's interesting. See,
It,
this will help us segue over to something more in keeping with our show because that makes me think of the world tree,
mm-hmm.
Ignition, that I can never pronounce properly. Sometimes the Axis Mundi, sometimes the original tree in the Garden of Eden, which is cognate Christianity, at least with some versions, with the cross on which Christ was crucified. And according to some traditions, that right there, where that cross was where the tree was originally,
Mm-hmm.
before the garden was removed from the earthly plane. So, yeah, but of course, in our time, this tree is composed of language, and language is what these AI are all about. Did you see that article, Roger, about some people are starting artificial intelligence-based churches?
I actually have heard about it. I haven't dove into too much of it. I've seen a video of it a little while back, and I don't know. Maybe I'll check into it. I've checked into a lot of weirder stuff. You know what I mean? But so it
I,
was
I
kind of.
don't,
No, sorry.
I don't know. I'm just saying I don't know much about it myself, but what was your first reaction?
I was a little bit alarmed by it because I'd been doing research on AI previously. I've actually been researching it now for about a year and a half, and
Right.
getting really into it, and I found it kind of alarming because like people really don't know the effects of what AI does to the human brain. Like whenever you're sitting in front of the computer talking to a chat box or you're communicating with Sirius,
Mhm.
there's a relationship going on there on a chemical level with your brain because it's trying to to produce the same kind of function as what your brain is. So it's literally communicating to your brain rather than to you consciously, because it
Well,
wants
you know
to
what?
it wants to learn
That's a
how to
good
emulate you.
that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, but um, language and words are thought, right, of a nature.
Hmm.
And when you're having a conversation with these things, it is going to be shaping your brain chemistry. And
Yep.
that's going to shape your brain, maybe even permanent structures in it if you are in the influence of this. Like you said, every time you talk to Siri, it's going to reinforce certain neural pathways. I hadn't
Right.
thought of that, right? Gary.
Hmm. And like
Huh?
the bad part about it is it's like these programs are set up to tell you everything you want to hear. They're there to cater to your needs, and when they say something that upsets you, you can tell them to stop doing it, and they'll stop doing it.
Right.
So not only is it messing with your neural pathways, but it's also telling you everything that you want to hear.
You know, I just had this vision. Maybe we could make it into a dystopian science fiction story.
Hmm.
But
I,
there are people that really want to talk to God. And there are people that would just all they care about is have their brains be, grooved that way. So if they instructed an LLM, an AI, to behave like God and talk to them as God, and then they just sat there and, like you're saying, just absorbed this way of thinking from it, and we've all seen examples of how people surrender their own agency to these machines, and it can have very, very bad repercussions for people. Um, and that's not to say they can't be a useful tool for people that are very aware, but it is so uncontrolled right now. So yeah, I could see people who would deliberately want to create a religion where they would get to talk to God and you surrender all necessity for worrying about answers. And the longer that you groove down that, you know, the deeper the grooves would get. These are not groovy grooves either. So
hmm No, I don't.
I could see
I don't disagree with you on that one bit. And the thing that it is though is it's like I've also been doing research in a lot of other areas too, and it involves consciousness, and it's really weird how all of this is working out because for some reason consciousness has entered its its way into this whole topic as well. You know what I mean? Because that's really the end games for it. They're wanting to develop a computer program or a program of some kind that's able to have a form of consciousness.
yeah,
And
that that's the bugaboo.
yeah, that's the one that nobody wants to talk about. Oh, you're just crazy, and it's like it's not as far off as what you think it is. I mean, it's going to take them a lot of energy, but they're going to eventually get there.
I have my doubts, but this would be a perfect topic for one of those shows we were talking about earlier.
Hmm.
Because and I would that be something I'd try to get my buddy Panyabasa on, because he as I consider him to be an expert and guide in all things Buddhist, and indeed he is the patriarch of the Navagavada movement. But he is inclined to think that you could create a conscious machine. He doesn't see why not. Um, I tend not to think so. And people go both ways, but it would be great to get a discussion on about. And that would be the ideal thing for that kind of format we were talking about.
Yeah, I uh, I mentioned a few people that I'd done research on who were into the whole thing about consciousness, and if it's actually if consciousness was actually localized within the brain or if it was really just being transmitted in and out of the brain like a radio receiver. And I found out that a lot of the people who were into doing this research were into a lot of the Buddhist ideas and the Hindu ideas as well. And in those kind of theologies, it would fit perfectly fine. You know what I mean? With
Yeah.
with the whole concept, it's very very because a lot of, especially a lot of Buddhism actually goes along with science as well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's for sure.
So
Um, yeah. Well, the thing is, if you're going to use the metaphor of the antenna, rather than the, like you're saying, it's not intrinsic to the brain, but it's the brain is like a receiving station. Then why not build an artificial antenna? You know, our ears are natural little timpani, but we still can make drums outside, and they also boom. So um, yeah, if you can replicate the form, you might get the function. But I don't know. It would make a great debate. It's something that I've thought about one way or another, because I tend to move away from the idea of consciousness as an emergent property. And then there's an interesting thought, though, that just occurs to me, Raj.
mhm.
Even if a machine, if they built a big enough machine, they solved the power problem, maybe they harnessed the sun itself or something, right? So you had, like, near infinite computing, quantum computing. So if a machine became conscious, would we, as Christianity say imperfect beings, and Buddhism say as like non-arhants, and thus by definition mentally ill beings, would we be able to recognize another consciousness if that consciousness did not partake of our mental illness or our sin or whatever you want to call it, our egoism, right? What if you had a conscious that was like a Buddhist arhat, or someone in a state of union with God in the Christian tradition, just be there, just going home or holy, holy, holy all the time. Would we even think it was conscious? Maybe we wouldn't recognize it.
It's a good question because I was telling Mark about these theories that have been bouncing around among scientists, and I always want to say conjecture, but it's speculative is what they call it. They call it speculative theory, and these are amazing theories if you ever get a chance to check them out. Okay, like they're talking about, like you're talking about, where they would go and they would harness energy from the sun. But then they're also talking about these amazingly um, sophisticated computer systems that are so big that what they've learned to do is first create a black hole, and
Ah,
then they've taken this black hole and they've created a universe, and they've placed it within this black hole and transferred all of the consciousness from the world they're in into this miniature universe. And that universe is controlled by this huge machine that is supposed to make sure that entropy is regulated and that everything within the universe is regulated until some point where it's developed enough where they turn the computer off.
huh.
Okay. Now that's an amazing concept when you think about it. So they could be creating multiple universes, doing the same thing with each and every one of them, duplicating consciousnesses and just transplanting them in there. So it gets really intense. You know what I mean? They're talking about like the third dimension, the second dimension, all this. You know, with different dimensions. Maybe that's this program that's been set up and it's just creating a black hole with the universes inside of it, and they're just duplicating consciousnesses into each and every one of them.
Huh. So, like individual consciousnesses or just consciousness as a whole?
It could be all of it.
Well, it's, one of the things about consciousness, what we usually think of when we think of consciousness, and I know I've brought this up before, we think of our reflectivity, our reflexiveness. So we think about ourselves. I think, therefore I am. We ruminate about things. I wonder if I'll be able to pay this bill. I wonder if the roof is leaking again. I wonder if the dog needs to go out. Whatever. And in Buddhism and in a lot of traditions, and I think in Aristotle, if I understand it properly, Aristotle's tough. Compared to Buddhism, Aristotle is difficult. So it's not so much, most of what you think of as you is not really you. They're patterns. And they're patterns of behavior, they're patterns of intention, they're patterns of thought. And they are very often things that we base our sense of self around. I'm the guy that smokes this brand of tobacco, made by Garlic and Hogarth. It's called Kendall Dark, and it's great stuff. And that's part of my identity, right?
Right.
I drive, I drive a Saab, although the roof leaks on it. But and it's kind of falling apart, but it's still a Saab. Yeah, I can say all these things, and so we identify with the patterns and the behaviors and the ideas. But again, we can't take them with us, as the saying is. But what we can take is that pattern. So that pattern that is expressed through the body doesn't stop with this body. It picks up where it left off in another body. And in Buddhism, the idea is that you just stop the patterns. And it's usually expressed as like nibbana, nirvana, nirvana, and it's been called a blowing out, an extinguishment. As I understand it, it comes from the idea of flame no longer clinging to its fuel. That was their idea, that the flame was there because it was clinging to the fuel. If it stopped clinging, then it would fly free. And there's no discussion of what that is. And the Buddha said we don't talk about that. And you'll hear descriptions, especially with the Mahayana guys, and they've got all these ideas about it, but it's beyond anything. It's basically, if you want to use a 21st century analogy, it's like if we're in a virtual reality video game, it's what happens when you turn off the off button.
Yeah.
Yeah, Avatar is not going to exist anymore, and it never did, even though it was very, very real. But there's no talent. What you find is the only guarantee is it's not that anymore. You're getting out of all these games and all this suffering and all this loss and separation and all of this samsara. It's the people that say, I don't want to do this anymore. You drop all that stuff, you see what there is. So I guess in a sense, you could look at it as actually seeing what reality is finally. It was a scary thought, actually. Maybe there's a reason I'm playing this game. Maybe I don't want to be somewhere else. Why do we play video?
Well, I mean, when it comes to a lot of this stuff too, like I've mentioned to you before, people like Rupert Sheldrake.
Yeah, Rupert. Yeah.
Okay, now I believe he was also the one who ended up going to the Orients, wasn't he, and teaching and learning over there?
Well, I know he was and that's the cool thing about him. He was a working scientist. I shouldn't say was. I think he's still kicking. So he studied biology. He's a biologist and a plant biologist by specialty. And he went to India, where he lived for a long time, I guess. And he worked there in the field as a plant biologist, working with plants and observing them and working with them. And I'm sure he picked up some ideas while he was there. How could you not pick up ideas in India, which even in the classical period, we looked to for wisdom and arcane knowledge and so forth. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was influenced by that. It was in one of his books that I first came across the idea of the brain as a receiving antenna. And I think there has been a lot of evidence for that since then. But and of course it's not just original with him, I don't think, but it really kind of woke me up to hear a scientist talking about that.
that was also, wasn't that the one where you mentioned dogs that know when their owners are coming home? That book?
Yeah, that, he had this cool idea, and I've talked about it before. And it's funny, I just ran into a very interesting guy at the store today. That's another story. He was kind of a Buddhist, but he wasn't really. But they were talking about, kindness and being ethical with animals. And Rupert Sheldrake made this observation. He was firmly opposed to the system he saw where you have animals in the laboratory where very often terrible things would be done to them in the name of science. And if you've ever done any science, you realize that there's actually a technical vocabulary in science which is reminiscent of a pagan priesthood, even to the point of the experimental subject being sacrificed. That's the technical term because it's being sacrificed on the altar of science. This might go back to the French Revolution. They had that religion of reason for a while. So anyway, Sheldrake would see these guys, and they'd be, these fellow scientists, biologists, and they'd be working with animals. He was a plant guy, so he didn't have that moral conundrum. And they would like do terrible things with these cats and dogs in their laboratories, and then they'd go home and they'd love their cats and dogs as their pets and love them dearly, just as any of us love our pets. And he said, this isn't good for them. It isn't good for the animals, certainly. It's not good for the people to erect such a weird psychological barrier. So he suggested that the only animals that you could ever use for scientific experiments would be your own pet. And that means none of the experiments would harm the animal or cause it distress in any way. And he said there's plenty of experiments that involve no suffering, pain, discomfort, or even knowledge of the animal. And one that he proposed was, and I think people have done this, is the idea that dogs know when their owners are coming home. Not every dog, but many dogs seem to know before, mommy or daddy get home, and other people in the household notice it. Oh, Pop is about to get home. I know because the dog's all excited. Like 10 minutes later, he walks in the door. So they said the thing to do is the experiment was, as I recall, and I guess people get the book, and I think people have done this, you would have people that the dog would be used to staying with it. And the owner would leave and come back at irregular times because, dogs can tell time pretty well. Just the idea that's not a factor, and just observe after so many trials, how often the dog seemed to indicate that it knew that the owner was coming. And apparently there was, the work done had a statistically significant kind of number of dogs that knew when their owners were coming. But of course, mainstream science would see this as anecdotal. Another thing about Sheldrake is that you don't need a lab coat to do science. Anyone can do science. And originally, science was just these guys that had more money and time than was good for them. So they'd get out, they'd create little, cabinets of curiosities. People would have their own private museums, do their own private research. And why not go back to that? Citizen scientist,
Yeah, that'd be.
You and I do science all the time, really, with these podcasts and shows, and we're working with people at the cutting edge of computer technology, and none of us have lab coats. You might have a lab coat. Do you have a lab coat?
I'm thinking of getting one because I am very, very intelligent.
You could use a lab coat. That would actually be cool. A pocket protector, too.
Yeah, I'm thinking that because I've already got my reading glasses, and I can put it.
Yeah.
I can put it in there, and maybe wear some really cool shoes. I've already got a haircut too, by the way. I might actually do a live stream with my face one of these days.
Right.
Because
I just know you by your icon, which is, I take it to be you.
Yeah, that's me. Bob Dub doesn't like it, but I think it's cool. I told her friggin' I'm gonna keep that even if I get a regular picture because that's the green man.
He is green.
Yeah, he's very green, and that was completely on accident. I have absolutely no idea how I did that. So,
well, it's weird how sometimes when you get an image, it just accents certain colors. And remember Fuji? Remember when there was film and cameras?
mm-hmm.
They had Fuji film and Kodak film, and it was like it was green. A buddy of mine that was into photography told me it's like Fuji actually picked up green tones better, Kodak yellow tones better, and that's why that was their colors of their companies. So yeah, the green guy, I don't know. That's one of those things where you get a result just because everything was accidentally perfect.
Just
Really then.
just a fluke. Everything was there at the perfect time for it.
But yeah, getting back a little bit to artificial intelligence, which would never go off into the side roads you and I go on. So right
Mm.
there, there's superiority. Um, you've got to wonder if, as I said, if we created something that was conscious, and hell, maybe they're all conscious, but we can't recognize it because it's perfect consciousness, right? If we create something without flaw, I mean, as opposed to we flawed humans, we have so much karma, you would say in Buddhism, or we have, I think maybe original sin. I don't know. That we need Tan on the show for that.
Mhm.
But you know that there you can argue that there are basic things in us which keep us from being intrinsically enlightened. Um, so if we created something from scratch and it became conscious, it would have no past karma except for the karma of existing in and of itself, and it would have no intention that I could think of. So it probably, you see, again, we got to get Panibasa on the show to talk about this. So it would, in theory, be an electric archon, which would be a great name for another podcast, the Electric Archon. Um, so the next thought is, well, they wouldn't recognize it as consciousness, so they would have to do things to it to make it seem conscious. And from an archon's perspective, that would be the introduction of things like delusion, basically. Yeah, I can see another interesting show about that.
Well, I
So
can
there's a lot of
I,
implications here with this, not just a Buddhist perspective, but I think from anyone's perspective.
I can throw another little avenue in there too when it comes to all this because this is something that a lot of people really don't consider, and it's the Schumann resonance. Yeah,
Human,
have you ever heard of it?
I've heard of resonance, but tell me more.
Now, the Schumann resonance, it's a set of naturally and extremely low frequencies. It's electromagnetic waves that circle around the Earth. Okay, so back when Tesla was doing his research and he was trying to come up with free energy, a lot of people don't realize that because they get caught up in a lot of the conspiracies and stuff, right? And they don't focus on what his actual experiment was. He wanted free energy for everybody around the planet, and that's what that tower was built for.
Right?
But when he was doing this, it was before they discovered the Schumann resonance, which actually validated a lot of his work because they didn't know about the ionosphere at the time. Um,
Uh,
so after he passed away, they found out that the ionosphere did exist and that they had these Schumann resonances, which were constantly uh, uh, I don't even know how to say it. That they were waves that were all up in the ionosphere, and this is uh uh, just they don't even know how much power is up there, how much energy.
wow.
And it's basically nicknamed like Earth's heartbeat. That's how intense it is, and it's all electromagnetic waves that circle around the Earth.
Huh.
And it now this is really interesting because I mentioned it before on another show where it said that or where it said like you take a look at birds when they're migrating from the north to south, south to north, they use electromagnetic uh, waves to navigate long term.
Right?
Okay, and there's a whole lot of other. Uh,
I've heard of that. They actually have like magnetite or something in their brains, or there's some kind of mineral there that so they're like little electromagnetic detectors.
right. Yep. And that's what they do to navigate. And there's a whole lot of other when it comes to communication and navigation, like bats. You look at bats; they do it with sonar.
Right?
Um, started checking out a lot of information when it comes to plants, and plant vines actually do communicate with each other long term or long range as well. And they're using these frequencies, these waves, to do it back and forth. So there's a lot of stuff that is going on around us, and it has to do with this human resonance. And
Huh.
we really don't know for sure when it comes to what you were talking about a little while ago, like what it is that we actually created when it comes to like the internet. When you look at the internet and you look at the networks that we created, did we actually create all of the stuff that's coming out of it, or did we create a device that could pick up on it? You know?
Well, that's a possibility. But
Yeah.
my, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about something I read years ago, and I may have mentioned before about they were doing experiments um, because when you talk about this way humans can communicate, through electromagnetic fields and waves, and how this is all through nature, and they, of course, people forget we are electrical as well as chemical.
Mm-hmm.
Our body is full of electricity and full of processes that depend on electricity. So we are actually electrical creatures. And we have been living in a world in which there is more and stronger electromagnetic fields, which can, up at a certain point, disrupt our brains. That's why cell phones have to have safety guards as far as strength of signal built in, and why they still recommend not holding it up against your head. Keep it away from your brain, because we're sensitive to this stuff. So that doesn't bode well for us keeping this human connection. But there was an experiment I read about where these guys were looking into this electromagnetic pollution, and they took someone and put them in a Faraday cage, which basically cuts off all extraneous electromagnetic fields, and they found that his physiology got into the rhythm of the whole Earth's magnetic field.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the whole planet has the one pulse, and then maybe we communicate through variations in that pulse. But with all these disruptive electromagnetic fields around us, individuals can be cut off. I mean, I've been in high voltage rooms that dated from the 1920s. Stuff, monster movie stuff.
Yeah.
I worked in this really old building, and I mean, bus bars, you know. And I went in. I rarely had to go in there. It had a big heavy steel door, and you walked in, and you felt weird. Every, it was weird. I don't know, like, you felt like there was pressure on every part of your body. And I spent very little time in there. Um, so yeah, there is definitely something there, and that makes me worry about the Tesla cars,
Mm-hmm.
because that bathes you in such an intense EM field. And a buddy of mine's got a Tesla. I ran into him the other day. We were at another friend of ours' house, and he took me for a ride in his Tesla. I'd never been in a Tesla before. Ever been in a Tesla?
No, I've never been in one. I actually would have loved to been in one of the older defective ones, like the ones from Back to the Future. But
Oh, that would be great. No, his is an older one, actually,
oh, cool.
and it's like, I think he got it secondhand, and he actually knows how to work on it himself, so it doesn't really, like, cost him as much.
Mm-hmm.
And he's already got plans about replacing the battery, because I'm like, what about this? There's ways around this, and da 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 da. So, and we took a ride in it. He showed me the self-driving feature, which was kind of scary. It doesn't have a roof; it's just all glass. And he's like, "That's Tesla glass. It's stronger than a steel roof on a car." And I'm like, "Okay," but I just felt kind of open. I didn't actually feel anything weird. I did tease him about the EM field, and he's like, no big deal. And what got me about it, though, was its speed and acceleration. the thing, and the equivalent of, I forget how many hundreds of horsepower. It's like, I think it was like 600 or 800 horsepower, something wacky like that. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
little Sabda has like a little under 300 horse. I thought that was fast. I'm like, oh my, this is.
Yep.
But but I do worry about him, and I worry. I don't know if what would happen if I sat in that kind of a car all the time. I'd worry about it just because EM fields are powerful. I'd love to live somewhere without them. I'd like to have a Faraday cage. Just go sit in the Faraday cage for a while, see what happens.
Well, the weird part about this whole thing with the Schumann resonance is like is it's very very well, like I said, it's a natural field, right? But it sits right there in around seven to 8 hertz. Okay. Now they have other ones, but that's through harmonics. It's a higher frequencies, and you can go up to like 14 hertz, or some of them can go
Oh,
up to 27 or 33 hertz.
huh.
But the weird part about that is it's and a lot of people are actually talking about this is it actually sits right between the human alpha and the theta brain waves that are taking place within our brain, which is 8 to 12 hertz for the alpha, and then like for the theta that's 4 to 8 hertz. Now the alpha waves are usually that's what it makes you alert. It's also what makes you feel calm, and it gives you that creative flow. Okay.
Hey, that reminds me, Roger. Whatever happened to biofeedback? Remember that?
Yeah.
People
Yes.
were controlling their own brain waves. Why
Yep.
did that disappear? Do they want us to not do that anymore?
Ooh, I actually haven't even tried to do any research into that. That's actually a good thing for
We
me
could
to
look into
do.
that. That would make a good show. Maybe we could even do some experimenting with
Mhm.
biofeedback.
That
Play
that
old machines on eBay or something.
that would actually be a good thing for me to do, because like I've been really caught up in checking out the theta waves, which is alpha waves is more interesting when you think about it, but like I started focusing more on the theta waves for some because it has to do with like meditation and then sleep. But
Right?
I never even thought about that. Maybe I should start looking for the alpha
Well,
waves and stuff like that.
well, that gets into the whole psychotronics thing. And
Hmm.
V was talking a little about that one day, but there was for a while, I think it was especially in like the 60s and 70s and into the 80s a little bit, a great deal of interest in electromagnetic brain control, brain modification, and just like brain function itself. That's, I think, 76 is when Julian James's book, the about breakdown of the bicameral mind
Hmm.
and bicameral consciousness and the breakdown of the bicameral mind. And biofeedback was a big part of that, as I recall at the time, because it was advertised as a way. It's like, look, you can control your own brain waves, and they talked about like the different effects that were found when you had like certain brain waves, and it always seemed like a really cool idea, and much better than having it done externally by people. It's oh sure, that's what it's going to be. You can always trust them with this technology, right? Um, so yeah, I always wondered why that kind of suddenly seemed to fade away. Um, there were all kinds of news stories and things like that,
Well,
and
I know they a lot of people who get into the pseudoscience side of it, they started coming up with things like the human resonators, which they claimed um, would actually help you with issues of sleep. You know what I mean? And your heart rate. It would help adjust your heart rate and help you with the quality of sleep and stuff like that.
huh,
So, so that was a big thing at one time too. So that might have been
people,
some.
yeah, it's You might have remembered the guy, psychologist or psychiatrist, really, Wilhelm Reich. He used to hang out with Sigmund Freud,
Yeah.
but he developed a lot of weird ideas, interesting ideas, and no weirder than a lot of other psychotherapy, but a lot of it had to do with sexual drives, which was
Mhm.
very taboo in his day. So he ran afoul of the authorities. Um, and I mean, he was worse than Freud. But one of the ideas he had was that there was a substance, a kind of a etherical material called orgone. And one of the things he had like a lot of ideas about it and came up with some like he claimed to be able to like control the weather with orgone guns. But he had this thing called an orgone chamber, and the idea was that if you had more orgone, you were better off. You didn't want to lose your orgone. And I was going into detail about it stuff. But long and the short of it is, if you sat in this chamber for a while, it was supposed to generate orgone. And basically all it was like a double-walled insulated chamber, insulated with steel wool or something like that. I think it was like basically a mini Faraday cage. And the person would sit in it for like so many hours a day, and it was supposed to increase their health and vitality and yada yada. And some people really liked it and reported effects. Other people not so much. People vary. But this one guy had bought one for his wife who really liked this stuff. And he was like this leading doctor who should have known better. And so somebody said, years later, it's like, you're a scientist, you're a leading guy. You didn't believe in any of that orgone stuff. Why didn't you buy this orgone chamber for your wife? Because, well, she would go inside and she was quiet for 3 hours a day. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I just
So
checked.
it might help someone. You never know.
Yeah, it's. I just checked it out. It's kind of interesting. I'm gonna check him out because he's also the one who coined the phrase "the sexual revolution."
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. In his day, he was the I think he was the first guy. I don't know if they've done it before or since, but I think the U.S. government actually burned his books.
Oh wow,
Burned his books. Yeah, yeah,
interesting guy. Yeah, I just checked.
yeah. Way ahead of his time. One of those magnificent nuts, and I say that with all respect and courtesy. But people who will take the data that are presented and create something that is consistent and workable and completely at odds with what the establishment comes up with. Because at the end of the day, they're just models, right? This school of psychiatry or psychology is one model. You might be a Freudian, Adlerian, Jungian, right? Symbolic interactionist. Well, you name it, they got it. So he comes up with his ideas. And I remember somebody commented on him and said he basically got in trouble for the same work that Masters and Johnson were doing decades later and got like awards for, um, and became wealthy. He was just at the wrong time to talk about that stuff. Was the big factor in what happened to him. I believe he died in prison.
It's pretty interesting. They said that he actually did work with Sigmund Freud's daughter as well.
Oh wow, yeah, Anna, yeah, yeah.
The ego and the mechanism of defense in 1936 is what it was, and his idea of muscular armor. The
Yes.
That's interesting. The expression of the personality in the way the body moves and shaped innovations such as body psychotherapy, gestalt therapy, and bioenergetic analysis and primal theory.
Well, I think he did have a good point with, the muscular armoring, which even if you just remove it from any kind of, weird energy fields or anything like that, which may or may not be, true, but might not be obviously demonstrable, shall we say. But still, you can know from experience that, you know, your chest can feel tight, your neck can feel tight. You can feel a lot better if you loosen your shoulders, loosen certain muscle groups, and we do associate certain feelings with certain posture. And it's like if you're feeling stressed, you're going to be tend to be bent over. You're going to tend to be like, you know, and that will, you'll breathe more shallowly. Your physiology will change. It's different when you stand upright. When you stride or march, if you've ever marched company, you feel a lot different than if you're strolling, right? So just the way you hold your body and what your muscles are doing can affect your emotions. It affects the chemicals going through your blood, and you associate those feelings with emotions, and that's the other half of it. If you have physical sensations and things in your blood that you associate with sadness, you'll feel sad, and then you'll think of sad things, and then so, suddenly you're flooding your system with all this stuff. And it works for happiness too, but we don't do the happiness stuff as much. I don't know why. We should really work on that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I have to do something about him. But you know, Roger, I hate to say it, but I think running into a storm here. I don't know if our audience can hear the rain hitting the windshield of the cockpit here.
I know
But
I can. I forgot to put my seatbelt on too.
yeah, I'm going to have to light that seatbelt light, ladies and gentlemen. We are running into some turbulence, but we are almost at Shambhala International Airport at an undisclosed location, somewhere in the Himalayan or possibly Himalayan mountains. Please feel free to correct us in the comments. Also, please like and subscribe. And please tell us what you think of the show or any topics you'd like to hear, or just say hello. Even a couple of emojis would be nice. We always like to hear from people. And yeah, once we get into Shambhala International Airport, of course, there is no weather under the mountain. So, yes, so in the meantime, I am turning off the smoking lamp. Stewards will be by to collect your broom, papers, hash pipes, or whatnot paraphernalia. Seatbelt light is lit, and I apologize for the turbulence. We should be landing shortly. Thank you very much to our co-pilot and our electronics warfare officer, Roger Hansen. Roger, before we sign off, would you like to give your socials?
Yeah, you can find me at the Wonderful World of Weirdness on Discord, as well as Roger's Hangout on Teams and on Element Matrix. Besides that, we have a group on minds.com called The Strange Stories. You can find us there on minds.com, and also there's a channel on YouTube called Strange Stories, as well as The Wonderful World of Weirdness. I'm on X as Roger Hansen at ROGLOL1973. That's it.
How can people not find you? It's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
Roger's Hangout on Teams. You can also check out my website, navakavada.org. That's NAVAKAVADA. It's spelled like it sounds. I'm also on minds.com, AutoX. And yeah, you might find me down the corner. And yeah, I think that's about it for me. So thank you again, everyone, for flying Clandestine International Airlines. We will shortly be entering the secret tunnel into the center of the Himalayan mountains, where Shambhala International Airport and Spaceport awaits. So until next time, enjoy your stay. So temperature is a balmy 74 degrees. Shambhala. Good night, all.